Hey guys, it's Spence. Happy Sunday. It's a nice rainy day here in Chicago. I want to try something new. I'm going to give you guys an education in a field where, hey, I have a lot of interest and I think you guys might as well. That's what to do with your video and photography from your trike flying activities. And today I'm going to start with some really basic subjects, but I want to see if you guys like this stuff. I'm going to continue on. And this, by the way, is one of those topics that I was mentioning about the new Trike Pilot, right? I don't need you guys to join and support it because I'm going to do the same old stuff. I need you to join and support me because I want to do some really cool new stuff, including some things that go into my areas of passion and expertise that might be interesting to you, right? Videography, photography, gadgets, electronics, how to do stuff, and not merely just the flying aspects or the machine aspects of trike flying. So please, I do encourage you, help me out here. Pledge your support as a student or as a pro pilot. It's either $50 a year or $100 a year. That's for the whole year. And there's a lot of other intangibles that are going to come from this, I promise you, in the way of other things besides hopefully stuff like today. Let's jump into the tutorial. So I'm going to be looking at you occasionally, but otherwise I'll be staring at the screen here. There is a product that I have just started using called HitFilm Express. It is an online video editing and a compositing tool. And what that means is that it allows you to do basic video editing, but it also allows you to do some really unbelievably cool special effects like you've seen in the movies. Now, many of you have never tried video editing at all, and definitely I think most of you have not done any kind of special effects. But with this, you're going to be able to do some cool stuff. By the way, the background noise, I've got the kids around, so we're just going to plug on through this. What we're going to do today is I'm going to show you how you can do a remix. Kind of those of you who are my generation, remember when we were kids, we used to remix, let's say, audio cassettes, right? You have to get it from the LP and put it on a tape, and it was all this. Well, now you can do the same thing. Subject to doing it for your own pleasure or respecting the person's copyright, you can go get content you want. Either it's free content from YouTube, it could be free content from any of the other sources on the internet, or it could be things like still images. And I'm going to show you the basics of how you can do a remix video of what you want to do. So let's start out with what are we going to do with HitFilm Express? This is a free video editing and compositing tool that works unusually both on Mac and PC, which is why I love it. Now I've already installed this, but you can get this at fxhome.com/express. Next, we're going to want to use a tool for getting some video content off of YouTube. There's dozens of these, but I use mate.com in order to download the YouTube videos that I want. And then finally, we'll grab a couple samples here just for fun from actually a lot of our community members here. I see Henry, and I see Wesley, and I see Larry, and so forth. We're just going to grab one or two of these to show you how you can do a remix. Finally, I'm going to show you also some sources like Pexels.com. There's also some sources that I use, which is Video Blocks. This is a paid source, but it's something that I use all the time as an alternative for getting good content that you might want to mix up. All right, so what are the basics? First of all, you're going to install HitFilm Express, and we're going to use this in this tutorial. So I'm going to open this up and switch back and forth here and explain the basics of this as quickly as possible today, and then we're going to go into more details if you like this kind of a video, right? So the other thing I'm going to need to do, let me switch back here. We're going to get some video content. So let's start by going over to YouTube and grabbing any type of video. Let's take a short one. Let's take one of Larry's. Well, actually it's Wesley. Wesley and Larry work together. So I'm going to go over to this video, and all I need to do, let's pause it. I'm going to grab the URL. Now again, don't disrespect somebody's copyright or commercial stuff and make it your own. But if you're doing a remix for your own pleasure or you're giving attribution to them, hey, it's on YouTube, so it's probably good for them too, as long as everybody knows who made the original stuff. So paste that here, and then you're going to click one of the choices, either download or go for 720p. Now let me explain some basics here. The resolution that's available is going to be lower than maybe the 4K because this is a free downloader. If you want the original 4K, that's cool, but 720p is fine. Let me explain what this is. When you're talking about the actual dimensions of the video, 720p is what used to be considered HD back in the early days. That was really amazing stuff. And that's basically 1280 pixels wide by 720 pixels high. Notice 720. So vertical 720 is 720p. You don't have to worry what the difference about the P is because that's a legacy from the old days. Just know 720 is 1280 wide, 720 high. That's really nice. That's going to work just fine. The next step up gets into things like we're talking about, which is 1080p. 1080p is when you've got a width of 1920 pixels by 1080 or 1080 pixels high. That's really considered the baseline HD today. Then there's this thing we're calling 4K. By the way, that is considered what we'll call 2K. The next step up is 4K. 4K is where you get into this crazy 1440 pixels high. Actually, it's 39. I got to remember it myself. 4K is 3840 by 2160. And that's really awesome. This is what we would do today if we're going to start with something that was our original source, but it's really going to be unnecessary for you to play with this. Just play with 720p. But I give you a little tiny bit of a layman's version of what you're looking at. So we're going to download this video, and it'll show up here as an asset. This is 37 megabytes. Let's download a second one because I'm going to show you how I would mix these up. So let's pick another short one. Let's take this one.
Worry about me.
The quality on these doesn't matter because I'm just going to show you some basic editing stuff and mixing. So we're going to download this one next. And I'm downloading this to a place on my hard drive where I would find it. In this case, I have a downloads folder. Notice this one doesn't have a 720, so let's find a different one because we don't want to mix a high res with a low res. That will give us a less than desirable result. So let's pick a different video. This one is Henry's, so for sure he's going to have, this is always awesome from Henry, he's going to definitely have this in high res. But we're going to pick the 720 version of it. Okay, so here's 720, we're going to download this. It's a little bit bigger file, it's 200 megabytes, but it's okay. Might take a second. Now what I'm going to do is take those videos, and I'm going to go over to my HitFilm Express editing window. And I want to go over here to home to start out with. What's cool about this product is it's a la carte. So you can do all the basic editing we're going to show you with all of the free effects and things that come with it. But if you ever want to add some really cool stuff, you can buy those things a la carte for $10, $9, $20, whatever. I found that for most everything I'm doing, it works just with the free version. And it's really awesome, especially for some special effects. What we want to do is create a new project. Okay, so let's say don't save the old one. I'm going to make a new one. And here's where we're going to start our template. We want to make sure that we choose the same thing as the resolution of the videos or the dimensions of the videos we just downloaded. So a 720p HD. Now, here's the thing. At 30 frames per second is fine, but video is 29.97 frames per second. That's the default of what normal video is. So if you want to stick with what the original source is and not change anything, you'll choose 720p HD at 29.97. For those of you who care, film look, the cinematic look, is at 24 frames per second. In this case, 23.976. If you wanted to take normal video and kind of make it cinematic, you could basically downscale the frames per second. We won't do that now, but I'll show you in a later video if you like this stuff. And it makes it kind of look very cinematic. It's just some little trick we have. All right, you'll see that the frame size is 1280 by 720, and the rest of it is fine, so we're going to start editing. Now, the basics of what this timeline editor looks like, I want to familiarize you with because we'll talk about this later. And there's different things that this tool does that makes your life easier. One of them is you can choose what workspace to work on here. So for example, you could choose to use the specific one for compositing, which is doing special effects, or organizing your video clips, or you could show just everything. Here I like to make sure I'm in the editing window, which lays things out nicely without any waste. So you see here now I've got a nice view of what I'm working on. Here's my clip editor, here's my timeline, and here's my effects and history panel. So how we get started is really simple. We want to just use the import to the media area from those two files I just downloaded. So I've got these two videos, we're at the top of my list. I select them and I can use my spacebar or my control key held down to select more than one at a time. And it will import them into my machine. Now, one of the things you should notice is that it takes a little bit of time. And I'm not on a fancy computer. I'm on a MacBook Pro, maybe 2015 model. You probably need to have at least a contemporary PC or contemporary Mac to do any kind of video editing. This is not going to work on a machine that's 12 years old. Anything you bought in the last couple of years, probably you'll be fine. Now what we can do is we can preview any of the clips here on the left window. So if I want, I can use this thing called a scrubbing tool. I can drag with my mouse and I can see all the stuff that's in the video. I can also say set a range if I want to of just where to focus. So let's say I want to start with just the place where he's flying. I move the scrubber tool to the place I want to start and then I click on set the in point. Then if I move to the end of the area I want to work on, let's say right before he goes to the beach, ta-da, I can set the out point. And now all of this is set so that I can just loop this, and if I hit the play button or use the shortcut of my keyboard space button, it'll just keep looping and I can preview what's here and see if this is what I want to work with. It'll just go back to the beginning and so forth. When I hit the space bar again, it pauses. If I want to work with this, all I need to do is now grab this video and drag it down into my timeline. And the timeline is the workspace where I do my editing. You'll notice it says video and audio, and it separates the two tracks from his original video so that I can work on it. Likewise, I can manually grab the scaling tool and make it easier to see what is involved in this clip. I can see what's in the video, I can see the histogram or the audio output so I know what has music and what doesn't. I can selectively turn on and off listening to the audio or turn on and off watching the video. There's a use for that later. And then there's other things I can do, like I can use the object envelope to selectively edit parts of the audio or the whole audio in general. So I can raise and lower the whole audio track's volume level. Or if I double click on any of those areas, I can do things where I selectively edit points of the track and make that, let's say, custom to what I need. Those are for another lesson. So now I've got one clip. Let's go and examine the other clip. So I drag it into my preview editor here, and I have a feeling that Henry's video is probably still downloading. So let's double check here. No, it's still there. It just says black at the beginning. Okay, so one of the things you'll notice too is that this looks a little blurry, but then it resolves. It's because Henry's is probably a little bit higher resolution natively, and it's probably still downloading it for my computer to use and processing it, which is okay. It sort of gives you that blurry sneak peek. Let's just take a little clip of this. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to set an in point and an out point arbitrarily, and I'm just going to drag this clip now. Now you'll notice if I drag it over the same spot where the first clip is, it just puts it onto new tracks. And in doing so, that means I can work with both of the videos. If I wanted to, I could use the same tool I'm on, which is the main selector tool, and I could just drag this particular video to the end so that it would be literally in line. And there's different reasons for doing it one way versus the other, depending on which tool you prefer. So, for example, if I wanted to do so, I can do with this tool here, a ripple tool, or a roll tool, or a stretch tool, or even the slide tool. I could just take the second clip, and I could, for example, just move it on over the first clip, and it will just basically eliminate what was there in the first clip. That's super easy. And now what we can see is that when I go from, by the way, right-hand window shows my output. When I go over here to my actual timeline and I move the editing tool to right before the transition, watch what happens. See? It's just a nice, clean, goes from one to the other. Now, what if I want to have a transition on that? Well, I can use an effect for the transition, and that's over here in my effects window, and I go to Transitions, Video, and I could do any kind of thing I want. I could do a motion effect, I could do pushing, sliding, I could do a wipe, like a clock. So if in this case I want to use an old-fashioned clock wipe, which is ridiculous, but I'll show you what it looks like. I drag it to the transition point, and now you'll notice, let's zoom in a little bit. You'll notice that this particular blue area is the actual effect. I'm going to focus on this area in the same way I did over here so that I can just show you what happens with this effect. Let's set the in point in our preview window before the transition and our out point after. And let's set this to loop. So now I can just see what that transition looks like over here. See how it's doing that old-fashioned clock effect? Okay. Now I could change the transition to something else. I could do it a couple ways. I can remove this one, or I could just add a new one on top of it. And it'll replace the old one. So for example, cross zoom, I'll just put the old one here, and now I can either have the first one to go to the second one, or I'll remove that. And what I can do is drag that transition over in the same way, right? You see how I'm doing that? I can put it exactly where I want it. In this case, I want it between the 2 points. Now, for this video, I'm not going to show you how to modify the length and the time and all that, but I'll show you in another one, if you guys like this stuff, how to do the special effects even better. So now we see the zoom effect. And again, because I'm looping it, I can just watch it over and over, see if I like it. Now, in another video, I'll show you again the difference I just mentioned about whether to do the effects this way, or what I like to do is separate my transitions and do it like this. And the reason is simply because once I look at my timeline project, I can very easily see which tracks are which when I have a lot of changes, right? It's very easy for me to see that I'm going from this clip to this clip and then back to another clip. Let me show you one other tool that's handy. This is the razor blade tool. This is where if, let's say I want to selectively cut out part of a particular video, I could just go to that point and razor blade it. Doom, boom, boom, slice and dice as much as I want. And then I can pick the pieces that I want to pull out by highlighting them and hitting delete. And I can do this as much as I want. Now I've got a bunch of disparate clips, which in theory I can realign, just as I was mentioning. So I can start to build the actual layout I want. Now, details of what happens with this, I will show you again in another video, but the basics of this are, okay, now let's say I've edited some clips from YouTube and they're on my timeline and I like the way they look and feel. One of the things that's weird is that the audio are going to be kind of messed up, right? So let's, in this case, take the audio and turn it off so that it can't be heard. It's still there, but I turn it off. So now if I play back, it's silent. Well, let's add a music track. Well, how do I do that? I'm going to go back over to grab something that's royalty free. And one of the best sources is if I go to YouTube royalty free music. YouTube has its own actual browser that you can get. There's an audio channel, plus there's, actually it's right here, Audio Library YouTube. You could pick anything you want, and any of this will pass muster. So you can choose by effects, like sound effects, you know, screeching sounds and babies and drills and A-10 jet flyby fire. That might be fun. Let's download that. And then let's do some music. Again, you could choose by the mood and the genre, right? Like, so let's do rock, a little Top Gun music here. All right, and I can listen to this, sample it. This doesn't seem very rocky. Let's do get up and go. Not exactly what I was looking for, but let's use it anyway. We'll download this. And now what we're going to do is very similar to what we did for the video, which is we're going to import this to the library. So go Media, Import, and we'll just take these two MP3 files and we'll open them up inside of our editor. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make a new track. And for this, we don't really need to worry about it. We can name it afterwards, or we could just start with naming it. I just drag it in. So let's start with, I want to wait till this imports. Here we go. All right, now it's here. Let's start with the music. So I'm going to drag this over, and I'm going to put it, let's say, into its new track area. Let's drag it from here, actually. I'll put it down below. Okay, and like I said, we can rename this by just highlighting it and renaming it. We'll call this background music. We can move it up and down the timeline to start it at a different spot if we wanted to, but for now, let's start at the beginning. And as I mentioned, we can adjust the overall volume up and down if it's a little too loud, a little too soft. All right. Okay. Now let's take our special effects. So we're going to take this and we're going to drag this likewise. Let's put it either right above or right below the other one. So I'm going to put it right below for right now. Actually, I think I'm limited by the track. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this track. There we go. I'm going to give myself an extra space. I think on the free copy, they limit me to the number of tracks, which is okay. So now I can again rename this. We'll call this special effect gunfire. Okay. And if I want to remove the length of it a bit, I can again just kind of grab the end like I did before, or I could just use the razor blade tool, slice it down, delete the extra part, and again, move it to wherever I think is useful, and I can preview it. Okay, this is obviously a bunch of nonsense. I'm not really trying to impress you with this particular video. Now let's say we like what we have. We want to go ahead and export this for use on YouTube. We're going to click on export, and it's going to show what's by default in the whole editor at this time. If I only want to export part of this, that's easy to do as well. What I would do is, again, select inside the preview window my starting point and my ending point. So let's say I wanted to start at 0. I set the in point here, and then let's say I want to go only till the transition. Again, I set the end point here, the out point. And then I can then use the export tool just as I had done. I'm going to show you also over here, there's an option, export, in out area. In this case, I'm only going to export the stuff that I had just highlighted, which is really useful because sometimes you don't want to do the whole video. Maybe you just want to do part of it. When I'm ready to export it, I set the preset on the right side. So here, if I want to export it to YouTube, I want to export it in a format that matches with what I'm doing, right? So there's presets for YouTube here. Doesn't mean that you're limited to them. But for example, YouTube 1080p, Vimeo 1080p, and so forth. If I want to set it to my own custom, then I just go ahead and set it up in another way. For right now, I'm going to show you, just use the basics. Even though we started with the 1280, which is really not 1080p, it's 720, we'll just export it to 1080p here just for simplicity. If you want to just experiment, use the new preset and go down to MPEG 4 and you can set it up any way you want. So for example, why I'm not doing it here, we could set the video and we could say the dimensions from the source and the audio from the source and so forth. Then we'll say use original source. This can get into a whole nother video, so I'm not really spending a lot of time here. If I export it as it was, I think it'll probably work out. It'll just export a 720p video. Finally, when I'm ready to actually do the export, I go down here to start exporting. And it doesn't take too long on my machine. I think your machine will be about the same, maybe a little slower, maybe faster. The thing I'm trying to show you here is like, this is how fun this can be. I could spend a rainy day Sunday taking all my coolest clips and working with them, and then exporting something that, wow, let me show everybody else how cool I am at editing, even if I can't fly today. So now it's done, I can click and I can preview it. Dun, 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 and that's it, right? Last trick, I showed you that we've got these free stock photos. So one of the things you can do is use these as backgrounds, and that compositing tool will come in handy later, but we can do really cool stuff where you have, let's say, some green screen effects, you have some machine guns blow stuff up, but if you need a really cool background, either for your thumbnail or on YouTube or for making your video, you can search here and you could do stuff like almost anything under the sun. Clouds, you could do, pilot, I mean birds, anything you want. There's thousands of pictures and images that you can use, and these are all, royalty free, copyright free. They're for using in this particular purpose, right? So let's do like sunset, and this is a cool one, right? I could just download this for free, and then I can use it in the same way as a background, just like I would for a video. So going back to our video, let's go back to our editor, And I've got another, let's do something here. Let's just put it in where something else was. I'll put it here. I'll just put it on the same line. So let's import it. Again, once you see how this works, it's really simple. Now I can drag it to my timeline. Now, one of the things I want to point out is stuff is like a birthday cake. If it's on the top, it's going to overlay everything. If you put it lower, it will be below everything else, which is really important to know because, for example, look at my preview line. When I put the video here above, I don't see the image. When I put the image above, it's visible. Let's do it this way. Something has gone wrong. Let's see what I did here. I think I just have the scaling off. There we go. If I take the image and I put it above the trike, I don't see it. If I take the image and I put it below the trike, you see the trike. Now, what I can do is I can use the sizing tool of the image of the video, or I can crop it so that once I move this out of the way, I'm doing this very rough and dirty, you can kind of get the gist of what's going on. Here I can have an overlay. That means that the image on the background is what I want, but I can show, let's say, a split screen, or I can show a zoom in effect, or I can, transition something. Or later, what I'm going to show you is I'll show you how to, let's say, get rid of the stuff in the background by using a mask tool or some kind of overlay replacement tool. So you could theoretically show like you as the pilot or the person flying in some imaginary cool scene, even though technically it was all just made up. So this is just a quick preview again of what to do and one of the things that I have a lot of fun with when I actually take the stuff that I made with those cool cameras. If you like this and you're seeing it on Facebook, like it. If you're seeing this on YouTube and you want to join TrikePilot.com as a supporter, go to TrikePilot.com/join. Contribute $50 for the whole year, $100 for the whole year, whether you're a student or you're a regular pilot. This is the kind of stuff I'm going to be doing. I want to show you guys all the cool tools, the toys, the tricks, the fun, the things that you can do around the sport of trike flying, aviation, and so forth that don't necessarily mean you're up in the air going vroom vroom. If you liked it, I look forward to hearing your comments, the suspense. See you on the next video.